I've had this nightmare more times than I can count. It always begins with me sleeping in my bed. Then suddenly I am no longer in my body, but hovering above it, watching myself sleep. Every time I try to move, to speak, to do anything, I am unable to. I am trapped in a sort of in-between state. Then I wake up. These dreams are so vivid that they often keep me up for hours afterwards, my heart racing. And then, as the sun rises, I feel better and I go about my day feeling as though I have been truly cheated of a night's rest. When I told my mom about these dreams, she would just smile and tell me not to worry. But there was something else going on in there too, something more sinister, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what. For a long time I thought that these dreams were just that, dreams. But one morning after experiencing one of these episodes, I got out of bed and walked into my bedroom to find some strange things happening. First off, the clock on the wall was turned backwards. That was weird, but I didn't really think much of it. What did catch my attention, though, were the drawings on my walls. My brother and I would often draw on the walls with crayons when we were little, but those drawings had been washed away years ago. Yet now here they were again, two stick figures holding hands under a tree, our names written in wobbly crayon letters beside them. But that wasn't all. Underneath the tree drawing, I noticed something else. There was a small toy airplane sitting on the floor like it had been dropped. This was my favorite toy when I was 2 or 3 years old, but I had lost it somewhere months ago. I picked it up and looked around the room for where the drawings had come from. But everything seemed normal. The only thing different was the airplane. I shrugged and went downstairs for breakfast, putting the toy back in my toy box. I told my mom about the drawings and the airplane, but she just gave me a strange look and said, "Don't be silly. You're making things up." I knew that I wasn't making things up, but I couldn't explain what was happening, so I just let it go. That night I had the dream again. But this time, when I was hovering above myself, I could see outside the window. There was a man standing out there looking in. I tried to call out to him, but as always, no sound came out. I wanted to tell him that he was in a dream, but I was frozen. All I could do was watch. He was tall and thin with scraggly brown hair. He had a dark complexion and wore a long trench coat. His face was pale and drawn, almost gaunt. As I watched, he slowly reached out and pressed his hand against the glass. Then he began to walk away. I wanted to scream at him to stop, but I couldn't. I just kept watching until he disappeared around the corner of the house. Then I woke up, my heart pounding in my chest. I got out of bed and ran to the window to look outside. There was nothing there. I checked everywhere, but there was no sign of the man. I told my mom about him, but she just shook her head and left the room. I knew she didn't believe me, but I knew what I had seen. As the weeks passed, the dreams continued. I would often wake up crying, terrified of falling back into that in-between state and seeing the man again. One day after school, I came home and went straight to my room. I needed to get away from everyone. They all thought I was crazy, and I was tired of hearing there is no such thing as ghosts and it was just a dream. I was certain that what I was experiencing was real. Sitting on my bed, I closed my eyes and waited for the dream to begin. I had a feeling it was coming back soon. When I opened my eyes, the clock was again turned backwards. My drawings were back on the wall along with the toy airplane. But that wasn't the only thing that was back. On the windowsill sat the man's hat, just like the one he had worn in my dream. I don't know how to describe the feeling that washed over me. It felt like a tidal wave, like a massive crashing of cymbals in my ears. It felt like my insides were being torn apart and put back together wrong. I screamed and fell to the floor as I tried to make sense of what was happening. What was he doing here? Why was he in my room? Who was he? I ran to the window and threw it open. Standing outside, looking in, was the same man. He was smiling at me. I screamed at him, asking why he was here, what he wanted. But he just stood there smiling, and then he stepped inside. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground, my bedroom gone, replaced by what looked like a dark and dusty attic. There were cobwebs everywhere and the air was thick with the smell of decay. In front of me was the same man. He looked older, like he hadn't showered in days. His smile was wide and sharp, like a shark's. His teeth were long and yellow. I don't remember how long I spent in there, but eventually I found a door and managed to escape. I ran to my mom and dad, tears streaming down my face. I told them everything, the dreams, the drawings, the man. They looked at each other and then back at me, their faces full of concern. Finally, my dad spoke. "We need to talk," he said quietly. My mom and dad sat me down at the kitchen table and told me the truth. They said that, once upon a time, before I was born, a man had lived in our house. He had a wife and son, and they were very happy. Then one day he disappeared. We never knew what happened to him, but my parents suspected that he had taken his own life. They said that sometimes when people grieve, they can manifest strange things around them. They believed that the man I had seen was the husband and father. I didn't know if they were telling me the truth or trying to protect me, but I knew that the man was real. Years passed and I grew up. The dreams continued every once in a while, but they weren't as vivid. Then one day they stopped altogether. I went on with my life, getting married and having children of my own. Then one day, many years later, I was home for Christmas. I was 24 at the time and still living with my parents. That afternoon, I was alone in the house because my parents had gone out to run errands. I was upstairs in my old room playing video games when I heard a knock on the window. I paused the game and walked over to the window to investigate. Standing outside was the same man. His hair was grayish and thinner, his face even more pale and drawn. I stared at him, unsure of what to do. He knocked again and then reached out and slowly pushed the window open. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The man climbed inside and smiled. I don't remember what happened next. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe I fainted. I don't know. When my parents got home, they found me on the floor, my video game's controller beside me, my mouth wide open. Outside on the windowsill was the man's hat. Outside on the lawn was the man. He was kneeling there, as though he had just dropped to his knees and was praying. He looked up at the house and then at me. I don't know who he is. Was it a dream? Was it a memory? Did he really visit me? What do you think?